We are in Luke chapter 8, and it's amazing to me how this particular message, because I did struggle with whether to just go ahead and have a whole Advent message on hope all by itself as a topic, or to just, let's introduce the season and then we'll move on with Luke. And how God has done this. He's brought the Advent message of hope into this passage in Luke chapter 8, starting in verse 22, or He's allowed us to be at this particular passage at this time when we're discussing hope. Anybody not have notes that wanted notes? Are there any left? There's none left.
I ended up with 2.
You ended up with 2. Okay, we've got 1 left. Going once. Delaney's got hers. Bob, you got yours? Okay, then I think we're good. We'll give it to the church mouse. On your notes, you have the one that says Jesus was in the ship. Actually, I thought about that only after I printed it, and it really should be boat, because a ship is like the Titanic, the Lusitania, something like that. A boat is like something a lot smaller. So technically it should be Jesus was in the boat. But the original title was The Attempted Destruction by Storm. And I thought, that's too mechanical. But nevertheless, very accurate. So this is how it reads. Now it came about on one of those days that Jesus and his disciples got into a boat. And Jesus said to them, "Let us go over to the other side of the lake." And they launched out. But as they were sailing along, Jesus fell asleep, and a fierce gale of wind descended upon the lake, and they began to be swamped and to be in danger. And they came to Jesus and woke him up, saying, "Master, Master, we are perishing." And being aroused, Jesus rebuked the wind and the surging waves, and they stopped, and it became calm. And he said to them, "Where is your faith?" And they were fearful and amazed, saying to one another, "Who then is this, that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him?" Okay. I love how this starts out. As you know by now, Luke sets us up in a story. In a sense, he does in one verse what sometimes in movies takes 15 to 30 minutes in a movie to set it up to where they can finally get to where the bad guy shows up or the good guy shows up or something shows up. And this is what he does in verse 1. Now it came to pass, and you know by now that means, and it came to happen this way. And I still, to this day, I cannot explain, and it's not a diss, it's just the way it is, but the New American Standard never, wait, I say that, hang on, I didn't check this out. I have the New American Standard update here. Now, on one of those days, Jesus and his disciples, and I'm reading my old one, which is the original New American Standard. Now, it came to pass on one of those days. So why in the update? I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud. Why in the update did they drop it? I don't know. I'm having this discussion with myself, and I'm not going to win, so I'm going to move on. Why? Because I always use the update for you in these, and I always use the old one to preach from. So, and I don't check them in between. Interesting. Okay, so now you know something that I now know too. So it came about in one of those days that Jesus went into a boat. So the time frame on this is after the parables, and then Jesus went to his home, and he gave private instructions to his disciples. So the one crowd perhaps dispersed, but now there's another crowd, and so Jesus entered a boat, and he got into it, and they launched out. Mark tells us that there's more boats with them. It's kind of like, is there no peace for Jesus? Is there no rest? And there wasn't. So let's launch out. And it's a picture that simply the day has progressed. He's ministered. He's taught. Things have happened. The disciples have learned. This is really cool. Another crowd gathers, and Jesus says it's time to move on to the next event, which we haven't even gotten to. I mean, in this story, it's going to happen across the other side of the ocean. Let's push out to the other region, to the other part, to across the lake. And so they do. Now, all of us have been in a boat, a kayak, a canoe, and even on a calm day, there's a little bit of a rock. And if you're a little bit sleepy and the boat has a comfortable spot and it's a little bit warm, they're real easy to nod off. So as they were sailing, Jesus fell asleep. And I know what happens to me at the end of a Sunday, and I've shared this with you before. I come home from Casmalia. Today is one of the three church sermon days, but sometimes it's just two, or usually it's just two. And I come home, I'm home about 6 o'clock, and I think of all the things I'm going to do, and I sit down and take a little bite, and then I'm out. It's like, sure, whatever. And you can imagine Jesus has been talking and ministering and giving and sharing and explaining and uncovering his story and God's truth to literally hundreds and perhaps thousands of people. And then the intimate group, I mean the quote-unquote church family, so to speak, the disciples. And so he gets on the boat. He has no responsibilities, and he just falls asleep. And you can only imagine how tired he was because he sleeps, and he's in a dead sleep. Now, in the English, the King James says, and there came down a storm of wind on the lake. Okay, we get the word storm, we get the word wind. And we kind of, in a sense, overlook there came down. That's the King James. The New American Standard. And a fierce gale of wind descended on the lake. Now that picks up the steam a little bit more. Lenski cuts it even closer to what it is in the Greek. And there came down a hurricane of wind into the lake. Let me just say that would be an unusual event. And I personally, and it's not the main part of the message, but I personally believe it was a supernatural event designed, as my first working title was, The Attempted Destruction by Storm, that Jesus was asleep in a boat. And man, if that boat could just go whoop, and everybody goes into the water and they didn't have their life jackets, then the Messiah's gone. Cool. And all those pesky little disciples with him. So a hurricane of wind descended into the lake, right where they were. And it appears to be very sudden, because by now they were already out in the midst of the lake. So they've been rowing already for a while, and hopefully the sail got them some of that without the rowing, but now they're in the middle, and now this huge storm comes. And the two imperfects in verse 23 tell us, and they were filled with water and were in jeopardy. Well, the imperfect, it's not a point in time. In other words, they blink and the boat was filled. The imperfect tells us that it was an activity that continued and the water was coming in. And whether they had some sort of mechanical pump or whether they simply had buckets, there was no way they could keep up with it. It was as it says here, they got into danger. There was great jeopardy. They were in danger. The situation for these veteran, strong, in their prime, professional sailors was dangerous. and the pumps or the buckets were not keeping track, or not keeping up. The Mark says that the waves were crashing into the boat and filling it. Luke says that they were being filled up and got into danger. And Matthew tells us that the boat was covered by the waves. And I've been out on the ocean and it gets too rough. I didn't go out in my younger days. There's people that start out and it's calm and then it gets stormy. Well, this is one of those, what you would call the perfect storms. And these guys recognized that they were in danger. And so we get to the uncovering of what they did in verse 24. And they came to Jesus and woke him up. And again, I tell you that in Jesus' humanity, since he was fully man, you can imagine how tired he was. And every once in a while, Kathy will wake me up out of a dead sleep, and it's like, ah! Who am I, and where am I, and who are you, and why am I awake? I don't know how Jesus woke up, but it says there, having been aroused, or they aroused him and having been aroused, or they woke him up and having been awakened. So apparently he was able to connect the dots of where he was and what was going on rather quickly. But in case he couldn't, they told him. They said, Master, Master, and I translated it as we are being destroyed. Because it's a passive statement. So when it says we are perishing, that's an active statement. A passive statement means that the perishing is happening to us. And we can't say it. We can't say the passive with the word perish very well. We are being perished is how we would say it, and that's too Shakespearean, so we're not going to do that. But the same word is destroy, so we are being destroyed. And I try to put myself in the disciples' shoes, and being out on the ocean, which I was. I've never shared that full story with you, but I got into the water, in the icy water in the Northwest, fully clothed with boots and about 5 layers of clothing. You know that one layer of clothing, that is a swimsuit in the icy water, is going to do something to you. So I had 2 elements to fight. The cold and the water as I don't even know the weight of my clothing, but the law of gravity was doing this to me. And so it's not that I cried out to God, but I do remember, because you don't sit stationary and just look at one thing when you're in the water. You're a cork, and you're doing this. And I was watching the scenery. I was watching the hills over there go further and further away, and the boats that were close were further and further away. And it's like, whoa, this can't be good. Because I'm brilliant. I think of these things. And my hope ended up being in my own physical, because I realized that I was running out of chutzpah to keep my arms going, because my legs were 2 anchors. My boots were 2 anchors. So they were pulling me down. My arms were very muscular. I was in my prime, and I had been working out, and I had been swimming every day. And so these things were guns. But the guns were running out of steam. And so I had a plan. My hope was in my own ability to undress as I went down. Yeah, any of you that are doing this, it's like, you were stupid, weren't you? Yeah, I was. But I could picture it in my mind. I said, okay, as the water went from here, because as I kicked, it's like, yeah, that's not going to work. You're not going to get me. Whoops, okay. All right, you're not going to get me. Ha, okay, yeah, okay. All right, well, let's have a plan, okay? And my plan was to, as I went down, I would begin stripping. So then when I finally was naked enough to swim, I would pull myself back up. All right, well, the story ends where I drowned and they never found me. So. No, Rocky, I'm kidding. They did find me. Kidding. A skiff pulled up and my brother was in that skiff, and I did this to his skiff, and he said, "Wayne, don't pull yourself in." And I thought, he has to be among the dumbest people in the world. I'm not staying in this water for another second. And so with what I found out was my last ounce of strength, I did pull myself in, and the skiff was here, my head was here, my arms were here, and guess what that is? Yep, that's my rear end. And there's the side, and that's as far as I could go. And I discovered in that moment that all I could do at that moment was simply to breathe, period. That was it. I literally could not move a muscle. And you know what's interesting? It wasn't until I was 60 years old that I was thinking through that, and it dawned on me that I never would have made it if I had gone under. They never would have found me. And I'm thinking, okay, it happened when I was 18, so let's say it was 58, so 40 years later, it finally dawned on me that I wouldn't have made it. I think in terms of these boys, master, which means in essence rabbi, it's not the same word as rabbi, but pretty much taken that way. Master, master. We are being destroyed. These guys knew what I ended up knowing when I was 60 years old, that we're not going to survive this. We left full of hope, with the master asleep in the back, heading across the lake on a beautiful day, and we've reached a situation that is 100% hopeless. Master, master, we are being destroyed. Now, I believe it's Mark that says, "Do you not care that we are dying, that we are perishing? Don't you care?" And what's interesting, and you guys can pull this out on your own, there's still three stories, this story down below from the Daily Bread, there's 3 of them entitled Hope. And the guy that wrote that said that it really looks as if they wanted Jesus to get up from sleeping so he could take his turn at the oars. Doesn't that, seriously, doesn't that strike you as humorous? Come on, Jesus, Son of God, Master, Rabbi, Teacher, take your turn at the oars, because we're dying here. Well, Jesus didn't take his turn at the oars. What Jesus does, he rebukes, he reprimands, he reproves, he assesses a penalty against the wind. He rebukes the wind, and he rebukes the billowing surge of waves that are pounding over the ship. He rebukes them. In essence, he says, "Stop it." That's what he says, "Stop it." And I go blink, blink. Because when the wind blows hard against me, it doesn't stop. Jesus got up, didn't take his turn at the oars. He rebuked the wind and the surge of the water. And this is what's crazy. They stop. They just stop. And we have, in essence, no real illustration of that. Even if you have a fan at home and you turn it off or unplug it, it still goes whoosh, 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 and there's still stuff coming out. This says it stopped and there was tranquility of the sea. It's literally like it goes, And I don't even think, my way of thinking, I didn't even think there was a ripple. Now, we understand from the setup in verse 22 that all was well. We understand from the description of the wind, the hurricane force of the wind, the waves being stirred up into a frenzy, the boat shifting between the waves, all the boats shifting between the waves such that there was no safe space, there was no safe place for a boat to be on this lake in this situation. The situation had become from beautiful to hopeless. They finally reached a place where they were desperate. They spoke to Jesus. Jesus spoke not to them, but to the waves and the wind. And all of a sudden, all was well once again. It is well. It is well. We sang that last week. It is well with my soul. Now, Jesus turns to them and he asks a question. Where is your faith? Where is your faith? Interesting that they, in a sense, it's hard to say, they forgot that he was in the boat. Jesus was in the boat. So where was their faith? Well, as I shared my story, my faith was in my guns. And when my guns gave out, I had a plan in my mind that I would change clothes underwater. These guys had a plan. And their plan was that they would row into the waves and away from the waves. And they would keep rowing. Their faith was in their guns. And their faith was in their minds. We can maneuver through this. We've done this before in other situations. We can do this. And what happened was that they reached a place where they realized, we can't do this. We are in a hopeless situation. And they did finally remember that Jesus was in the boat, but did they really call upon him to do what he did? Well, the answer is no, they did not. I believe that they truly wanted him to take a turn at the oars, because what it says in verse 25 is, but having been struck with fear, they wondered, they marveled, they were amazed. And their question was, who then is this? Who, as we would say, who in the world is this? That even the winds, when he gives orders to, and the water, the word literally is they submit to him. The wind and the water accept his words. Who in the world is this then? So when Jesus said, where is your faith? It cuts. These guys are in close proximity to Jesus, and they still do not place their faith in him. They place their faith in their own guns. So, this is what we know. We know that the hope had turned to hopelessness. We know that. We know that their hope was in themselves. We can fix this. We know that they forgot that Jesus was in the boat with them, and if they had indeed put two and two together, that he was the Messiah, God encased in flesh, Emmanuel, God with us, the Creator God who came down invaded his own creation by becoming a part of it, they forgot that. They forgot that. They forgot who he was. And when Jesus acted, they were surprised. So the question for you and me, and I'll tell you this, that, and I know you're tired of hearing it, but the world we lived in a year ago is not the world we live in today. The earth is, but the world isn't. The world system has gone haywire. There's a lot of disconnects, and it's like the old telephone operators. They do this in one and they plug it in here. Well, our world has done that. And in my estimation, it has done it in ways that you and I, in our wildest dreams, would not guess that they would or approve of it if they would. But our world has brought a sense of hopelessness to too many people. To too many. Christians ought not to be hopeless people. Christians need to be hopeful people. So the question for us is, if Jesus were to come in and stand up here and point and say, "Where's your faith?" The question for us is, are we like the disciples? We're around Jesus, we're with Jesus, we just listened to his story on the parables, how exciting, that's wonderful. We are hearers, we are true hearers. And the question comes down, well then, what really are you hearing? Are you hearing me? Are we like the disciples? Are we surprised at the world situation such that our surprise leads to hopelessness? There was a song, and I don't think we have it in our repertoire, but the first words are this: "My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness." And the rest of the song goes on, and it's absolutely, absolutely wonderful. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. Our hope today is not in a president, not in a political system, certainly not in world leaders or the world's view of how things operate. Our hope is Jesus. He's our hope, always has been, always will be. And here's the thing you need to realize if you realize nothing else. If you consider yourself a disciple on a storm-tossed sea, where the sea is threatening to overwhelm you and make you disappear from this world, just remember who is in the boat with you. Amen? Amen. Father, we are so grateful that we got to be here today and talk about hope. And I'm so grateful to you that in the course of things, you chose to have this passage, of all passages, connect with the first day of Advent and the idea of hope, the fact of hope, and to remind us that our hope indeed is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. And we can't trust in anything else, in anyone else. So it's you we trust. So Father, this week as we are buffeted by the winds of change, the storms of this life, Father, may our eyes turn to the Master. He is never asleep. He's always awake. He knows our situation. He's declared the end from the beginning, and we are assured, based upon the promise of the second advent, that we are on the winning side. So, Father, as we leave this place, give us that which we need this week to have victory after victory in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. We pray. Amen.
Amen.